Okay. My name is Mariah Nichols, and I am deaf, and I have traumatic brain injury, and I also have CPTSD, chronic post-traumatic stress disorder. So the thing, though, is that I was raised without recognizing any of my disabilities as being disabilities. I was raised to really think of them as, because my family is very religious, and raised to think of them as things that God gave me that I should overcome. And what this happened, because these disabilities are, especially the hearing, are very intrinsic parts of me. And so struggling to overcome something that is not possible to be overcome, like I can't suddenly turn a switch and become hearing, was extremely difficult for me. And I ended up internalizing a tremendous amount of shame. And I went through a very long period of time of feeling this very deep sense of shame, this sense of worthlessness, like what's my point? Why should I, that really into my marrow, that sense of worthlessness. And as I mentioned, I had been, I raised in the Pacific Basin. So I was raised in Fiji and then here in Hawaii. And I first went to Japan when I was 15 as a Rotary International Exchange student. And when I went to Japan, my hearing, or my lack of hearing, really was an asset. It was a huge asset, because Japan is so, the culture is so tuned in to nonverbals, and I was already tuned into nonverbals. So I was really way ahead of the game, and very successful. I could also, there's something about the way that my hearing actually is, where the sounds in Japanese were easier for me to hear in some way than English, but I still wore hearing aids and still, really struggled. So I went back and forth from Japan, Taiwan, and Hawaii for about 5 years. But what happened was, when I finally went back to Japan for the last time that I was there, where I lived and worked there as a corporate trainer, this was after graduate. I don't want the story to get too long, so I'm not going to get into details there. But I went to grad school and I fell in love with a Japanese boy. I followed him back to Japan, where he promptly dumped me. And then I was like, oh man, so I had to get a job. And I had just gotten out of grad school with this degree in international management, and I was trying to figure things out. And like I said, I had a leg up in that my tuning in to nonverbals was extremely, was very much an asset there. But and my Japanese too, definitely an asset. But I was still having a really hard time getting a job. And in Japan, they'll flat out say, oh no, we're not going to hire you, you can't come here, whatever, because you're white, or because you're American, or we don't like your hair color, or you're too fat, or you're not born in the right day. We don't want you because you're born in May. That's legal. That's totally legal in Japan. So they would say, oh, I see you're wearing hearing aids, so no, we don't want you. We don't want a deaf person, And so what happened was, I had to convince people to hire me because I was deaf. So I would say, no. Actually, you want me because I can't hear. And why? Why do I want someone who? Because I know what it's like to have to figure things out. I know what it's like to have to translate things. I know what it's like to need to articulate, because these are Japanese people who are working in corporate environments, who need to learn English, and they need to understand American culture, they need to understand these things. So I was able to translate why exactly they wanted me, not despite the fact that I was deaf, but because of the fact that I was deaf. And you know, I made a good case for myself and I got a great job there. And I was, you know, working as a corporate trainer for a few years and I was very successful. And then what happened was I went back to San Francisco afterwards, and my hearing really hit me in a way that it had never hit me in Japan. It always been sort of a struggle there and had been, you know, difficult, but not like it was in San Francisco. When I went back, it was like a huge slap in the face. You know, I couldn't make it through interviews. I couldn't, I couldn't deal. So I ended up getting help. Oh, the other thing, it wasn't just my hearing, it was also my brain injury was really popping up in the Bay Area. So what happened was I would black out. I would not be able to see. I would just get frozen in a situation. I wouldn't be able to remember things. It was horrible. And I got help from Voc Rehab for ways that I could focus and ways that I could get through an interview. And it was all extremely helpful. You know, I never looked at these things as disabilities before, and it was very, very helpful for me to see it as that and get accommodation for it. That was incredible. But I got hired. Now this whole long story is coming to this point. So I got hired by the University of California at Berkeley in this program that they were starting with the California Department of Voc Rehab. And it was in the Career Center, but it was specifically for students and grads of UC Berkeley with disabilities. And it was to help everyone get through internships, find and keep jobs when they were done with school at UC Berkeley. And this is from bachelor's through PhD in my program. And I had about 100 people in my program, all across the disability spectrum. So I had deaf people, blind people, autistics, I had chronic illness, I had everything that you can think of in my program. And what happened was I would meet with people and we would talk about their career goals and things like that. And they would say, who would want me? Why would anyone want me? And I was shocked because, you know, they're coming out of one of the best universities in the world and they don't understand why anybody would want them. And it's all on the basis of disability. You know, they're coming out, they're blind engineer. Why would anybody want me? I'm blind. Like, really? You have a PhD from UC Berkeley. Like, that's incredible. And they really couldn't see it. Then once in a while, I would come into the program who was like, oh yeah, I know who wants me. I know I'm worth it. I know I'm awesome. And they were just really full of themselves in a great way, you know, in a super solid, really authentic way. And I would ask questions and it came to light over a long period of time, over many years, it came to light that the students who had this sense of worth had gone through the disability studies program at UC Berkeley. Like, they knew about their disabilities. They knew about the disability rights movement. They knew about disability as a whole. They knew about why having a disability in and of itself is something to be proud of. And they knew why. They had spent the time and reflection and looking back into it, and they had that sense. Those people, I had no problem connecting with jobs and internships. The other people who had not gone through the disability studies program, it was a Mount Kilimanjaro climb. It was just so, it was almost impossible, because this is the thing, you can have qualifications coming out of your wazoo, but if you don't have that sense of confidence and that you're contributing something, that you're worth it, people aren't going to want to hire you. So I got to the point where I didn't even really want to work with anyone unless they had gone through the disability studies program and they had learned all of these pieces. Then what happened was I had my daughter has Down syndrome, and my older son has, he's on the autism spectrum, but I didn't know that at the time. You know, it was really my daughter being born. And when my daughter was born, I ended up quitting my job and going on a completely different path. But all of these pieces, of course, very much stayed with me. How am I going to raise my daughter to be proud and raise my daughter in such a way, and my son, where they're going to be able to have, you know, lives of their choice, where they're going to be safe, where they're going to be protected, where they will be able to, again, be safe from abuse, because that's another thing. People who are very confident, who are very proud, who are very strong, are not usually targets for abusers. So all of these things were, you know, in my mind, and I started looking back at not looking back, but looking at other groups who faced a lot of oppression, you know, like the LGBTQ community or the Black community, you know, and how do Black communities develop these Black pride, you know? How do they do that? And there's some thoughts that I have in there, and part of it, like, it feels a little weird to just be talking and talking and not talk, you know, not more of a conversation or dialogue, but I feel like part of it is in verbiage, just in the words that we use, and in that not in that instilling in people that what they have is not something that needs to be overcome, but rather it is a platform upon which they experience the world. So it's an intrinsic part of who they are, and it adds value to their life in some way. The key there, I think, as a parent, is helping my child understand what that value is, because it's going to be different for each person. It's what, you know, what is of value to disability in my life is not the same as it is with my son or with my daughter. They have different disabilities. They're different people, you know, than me. Like what and how they utilize or how they tap into their disability is also different from how I utilize or tap into mine. So I think that's one of the things that a parent really is charged with. Maybe that's too strong of a word, but I think it's imperative that parents really take a step back from what our culture says that disability is. Just take a big step back and see it as this platform upon which their child is experiencing the world, and that platform is giving their and take time to figure out what that is exactly for their child, you know. And of course that's a conversation with their child as they're growing up, but it's, you know, if the parents really tuning in, you can see certain things, you know, bubbling up. You can see things emerging and really enhancing those aspects, and not what do you I'm sorry, I'm not even I don't know the word for this, but like not fluffing it up, not trying to transform it, not trying to disguise it. Like with my daughter, it's, you know, oh, that's because you have Down syndrome, you know. Oh yes, that's because you have Down syndrome, you know, or whatever it is. It's you know, this is very directly attributing things that she does to Down syndrome when it's applicable, you know. And the same thing for my son, who is on the autism spectrum, is attributing these things to his particular vantage point, you know, who he is. And I think that's really important. And I think it's also very difficult to do. Like for some people it probably comes easy, but it's really hard for the majority of us to do this because our culture is so ingrained in us, you know, about us seeing disability as this something to be overcome, as this, you know, this non-value added aspect of existence, which couldn't really be further from the truth. I think in that culture aspect of it, I think I know for me with my kids, we are careful about what we consume culturally. you know, we watch a lot of movies, we listen to a lot of music, we read a lot of things, and we talk about it, and we talk about what is cool about a certain projection of disability, or what's wrong about that, or how could that be changed, or hey, did that actor even have a disability? Like, is that what's going on here? I mean, I stop and take time to walk my kids through every aspect of those different pop cultural elements that we consume. So it's being very careful consumers, and I think that's another thing that is really helpful in raising proud, strong people with disabilities, is being able to recognize what is malarkey and what's not, and being cognizant of representation, of disability representation in media. I think that's really, really important, and just being able to talk about it. For example, there was a Netflix series on that that dog, that emotional support dog, and it was for kids. And my kids really liked it. They thought it was hilarious. But I used to have a hearing dog. You know, I used to have a service dog, and there was a lot of stuff in there. I was like, what? You know, so we would stop and we would talk about it. We would talk about like the service dog aspect and emotional dog versus service dog, and how much of this is misrepresentation, how much of it isn't. Like, isn't it cool that his best friend is a wheelchair user? Like, and we would talk through these things, you know, as well as like privilege, you know, the white privilege, and the fact that this kid has got these parents who are, you know, with him all the time, and what does that mean, and how does that add to the disability experience, you know, just the presence of privilege. And so we talk a lot about things, and I think that that's another way of raising really proud, strong kids, is being very transparent about things, really talking them through it, being able to recognize misrepresentation, and being able to talk about it, and seeing it as a good thing, you know. Oh, yay, he's autistic, woo! So, you know, we'll talk it through again, you know, like, do you think he's really autistic? And a research, you know, let's look, does that actor really have it? Da, 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 da. But we talk a lot about these things. Again, in verbiage, the whole special needs thing has always rubbed me wrong. I have this t-shirt, which I was actually going to wear for this, but I was scared I was going to still spill coffee on it. But it's because I tend to not be a clean coffee drinker. But this t-shirt says, human rights are not special. And I think that that's really true, because I feel like when we're saying special needs, special this, special that, it's setting these things up as a separate, as an other. When, you know, it's we're all one, and we all have these unique needs. And so you can't, I don't think talking about things in a special way helps anyone. I know I don't like being called special. I mean, in that capacity, but I like things being clearly defined, and I think that you should call something what it is. And I think that in naming that, there's no shame. I mean, this isn't something that we're saying is a bad thing. You know, disability is not a bad thing. Being deaf is not a bad thing. Having TBI is not a bad thing. Having CPTSD is not a bad thing. So just say what it is. It's, you know, and I think that the more that we talk about these things too, the less stigma there is, you know. It's not, so yeah, that's really my goal with my kids, is raising them to be proud of exactly who they are, to recognize and understand what they bring to the table as it pertains to disability.
You, excuse me, but you and Susan, I don't know if Susan was listening at that time, but she hates that word special.
I love you! I love you!
Said,
Me too!
it's just humanity. Sorry for interrupting, but I couldn't help myself.
I'm glad you did. Thank you. But that was the first thing that I loved about Susan, because I met her at a conference that I was very privileged to attend, and I loved her t-shirts. They were so awesome. And I was telling her that I bought the label one, you know, labels belong on jars, not people. And I bought it for my daughter, and she's passed it on to her little brother from there. But We still have it. It's excellent quality, really, really great. But I loved all of her t-shirts. I had a great conversation with her son. Teddy, is that his name? Teddy?
Yep, yep.
Yeah. Okay. I really liked him. I thought of him many times over the years. I just really, real. Anyway, I don't want to get distracted, but yeah, that's really it. I think that's the heart of what I wanted to say.
You know, I wanted to go back to a point that you made, and then my phone rang when somebody wanted to get in. Oh shoot, now I'm losing it. One of the things that has happened to me recently is we've met my son's brother from birth. My son's adopted and his adopted. There's a number of things as my son's been growing up I've attributed to Down syndrome. And it's like this is one of Teddy's characteristics, and it's a Down syndrome characteristic. It was okay. That was just the way I labeled it. But now we've met his brother, and they have the same characteristics. And his brother doesn't have Down syndrome. So it doesn't have anything to do with Down syndrome. It just has to do with something that's culturally different from me.
But that's where Down syndrome, I think, is a particularly challenging disability because of the fact that it's so misunderstood. I feel it's so misunderstood, and there's not a lot of strong adult leaders in the Down syndrome community. So that's definitely a challenge. It's not like they are in other disability communities where, you know, in the blind parent community, they've got blind parents saying like, no, you know, or they've got like, you know, deaf parents saying like, no, that's not how you know, whatever. But I feel like we're kind of groping in the dark, you know, with the Down syndrome community. And then we don't want to attribute it to the stereotype.
One of the things Teddy's brother does, Teddy does, is he picks up his shirt like this when he's frustrated. And he'll go like this with his shirt and he'll lift it up. He's done that all of his life. And every time he does it, it's like, Teddy, pull your shirt down. Don't do that. And I always think to myself, he has Down syndrome. It's okay. You know, it's how I've always labeled that behavior as being a Down syndrome behavior. And we saw his brother. We had a Zoom call. And it's first time we're meeting his brother. And his brother is going like this.
Oh, man.
And since they had just met for the first time, this absolutely, and Teddy was out of the house before his brother was born. There's absolutely no way this is a learned behavior at all. Yeah. This is something somehow genetically, I don't know how you can pass down that behavior genetically, but it has nothing to do with Down syndrome. It has something to do with their sibling bond.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the stuff that I've always thought with Down syndrome with her was like her it seems like so many people have that, and her, of course, her social skills are pretty darn awesome, you know. And her patience with people. I think she's very forgiving with people, and it seems to me that seems to be like a Down syndrome thing, like where they're just forgiving with people.
Yeah.
And they have space for people to be themselves, which I really appreciate that. You know? But I always hesitate to get into this or to talk much about this because I don't want to get into those stereotypes either, you know, about like always happy or blah, you know. It's challenging, yeah.
But you know what I've noticed because of that is I think that people with Down syndrome seem always happy to people because when they're happy, they're extremely gregarious. But when they're unhappy, they're very reticent and they close back. So you don't see them when they're sad. You see them when they're happy.
That is such a good point. No, I really think that's true because she totally retreats into herself when she's not happy. Yeah. Wow. The other thing is the bolting, like running, that seems to go across the board, just that bolting. And that can be a positive thing too, in the sense that to me, it's like so in the moment. Like people with Down syndrome just seem to be very in the moment, like living in the moment. And that's something to appreciate, like, and something to a lot of people strive to be able to do that, to live in the moment, just fully enjoying and fleshing out what is right now. Yeah. Hi, Michael.
You
Did
guys
you
hear
guys
me?
Hi, I was just noticing your clock in the background.
8:35 here.
Yeah, a little different than our time. Where are the palm trees?
Yeah, if you, all the sides over here, I have a lot of hapu. I don't know if you know that, but it's a type of fern, and it grows very, very slowly. And it grows basically a couple inches a year. And the hapu around my house are enormous. They're like almost as tall as my house. So they're very, very old.
Awesome.
Yeah, I wish I could show it to you, but
So have you always lived in Hawaii? I'm wondering if you noticed differences in support systems in Hawaii versus
oh, they're huge.
elsewhere.
Huge. So I moved to Hawaii when I was 13, and then I moved back and forth Hawaii, Asia for quite a while. But you know, okay, so I went to high school here, and in high school the choice was to ultimate segregation, all the disabled kids in one wing and everybody else, and that's another reason why I was trying so hard to pass, because I didn't want to go to the separate wing. And then when I moved back here, just a few years ago, I moved back here with my kids from California, and there's enormous differences, yeah, between California and here. Well, one, I was completely denied any type of support for my daughter here with the developmental disability stuff. In California, it's a given, and they just give it to you, the support. You can get respite, and you get with my daughter, we did do ABA in California, and I know this is a little controversial, but for her, it was a wonderful thing, and it really helped with her bolting, with her, you know, running off. That got to be really scary. So it was wonderful that here, not even an option. ABA was not even on the plate, it just wasn't there. And the school services, the IEPs were just, it would be a joke if it wasn't so important, you know. It was I mean, I was speechless, honestly, over how little they were gonna provide for her, and how little they were going to do. But see, this is the thing, though, that's important to know about Hawaii, is that aloha here is very real. It's a very real concept, and it definitely exists here. So the fact that there aren't a lot of support systems or a lot of things in place doesn't mean that people don't want it or they don't care. It just means that you need to really ask for it and be explicit, and then you get it. And most of the times the support services people have no clue themselves. They just don't know. It's like coming back in time here like 50 years ago. So it's not like you're up against to me, the most difficult roadblocks are the ones that are about people's perceptions of disability, and people being against it, and people not wanting to have interaction with it, and people not having open hearts. To me, that's way, way more difficult than to deal with systemic blocks. With systemic blocks, you just have to be like, oh, hey, you know, she actually is entitled to this, this, and this. And they'd be like, oh, really? I didn't know that. Well, yeah, she is. So let's change the IEP. I don't know how. This is what I knew. Oh, let me help you. So maybe it's more work on my part, but you can get everything changed. And I got everything changed for her. It wasn't that difficult, but it was more like mental loops for me too, because when it first happened, it was like, it felt like a personal affront, like, why are you doing this to her? Why are you, you whatever. And then I just took a step back and I realized, oh, they really care about her. They really love her. Like, this isn't about them not wanting to do it. They just don't know how. So,
Mhm.
yeah. Whereas in California, it was different because maybe we got a lot of services, but that aloha wasn't there. I mean, I would, yeah.
California's a lot better than most states. we, there are other words that people have instead of aloha in some states,
It is. It is. It is. You're right. It is. Yeah.
like the middle finger.
Yeah. Yeah. But I remember, like, in some meetings in California, they would be like making sort of snide comments and little digs at her or people with developmental disabilities, which hurt,
Mhm.
But the services were really good. Yeah.
So are they doing inclusion now? They're not putting them in a separate wing anymore? Kids that are in schools?
Oh, inclusion. So they still, in not all of the schools do inclusion, but the majority of them do. In my daughter's school, there's a couple of classrooms where they're segregated, but the vast majority of the school system is naturally included. There's some other schools though where it's more segregated, and it's a concern. It's definitely a concern for me. And so one of the things, again, in this lack of education thing, parents don't even know. They don't know that they can have their kids IEP changed and have them actually fully included. So with Moxie's best friend, for example, my daughter's best friend, he's in a fully segregated class, and I said to his mom, don't you want him included? And she said, oh, he can be? Oh yeah, he can be. So she just didn't know. So we're working now to start this Big Island Parent Disability Resource Network where we can train parents in how to, form an IEP, how to, get this and how to ask for this and how to, what their rights are, and what they can get. Most people don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we find the same thing just with the ADA. People don't know if they're included, if they're not included, how to ask for changes and so on.
Yeah, it's hard. And there's culture here too, because people don't, they're really, there's still a lot of respect here for teachers and for administration and for, authority figures.
Count yourself lucky because that doesn't exist much elsewhere.
No, but it's very much here. So it's like people don't want to, be pains in the butt. They don't want to be Karens, So it's working with culture to just be like, well, there's ways of doing this where you don't have to be abrasive, and you don't have to be impolite, you don't have to be these things to ask for your kid's IEP to be changed. You don't have to. So, but
Sophia,
that's another configuration.
take this to Grandpa.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, my daughter's like in the middle of packing and asking lots of questions.
Yeah.
So Mariah, I was wondering, since you're the parent of 2 children with very diverse disabilities, so how has that changed your parenting style, given that you've got kids now you've got 3 very conflicting sorts of parenting needs to address?
Well, it's not that. So I've been like, it's been for my son who's on the spectrum, there's a lot of sort of crossovers with deaf culture and with just the deaf way of being. that are interesting to me. Like one thing is we're extremely explicit. So there's no like, you know, a lot of guesswork. It's like explicit. So that was easy for me. Just being really, really explicit about things, you know, not taking things personally. It's not something that I've ever really done, you know, so that was easy. It's really with my daughter that was very difficult, because her disability is so different from things that I am familiar with. And there's so much prejudice against people with Down syndrome. And there's so much more of it's visible too. That's the other thing, it's visible. So there's more automatic discrimination. And there's more of a challenge to try to get people around us to see her as a child with Down syndrome who is fully deserving of rights, opportunities, and privileges, and has something to contribute. So that's definitely more of a challenge. Like with my son, that's the other thing about him, is that he's really gifted. So the school's always like, oh yeah, well he's great, and they automatically see things that he contributes to just because he's so gifted. But with my daughter, they don't. Oh, they'll be like, oh, they'll do the happy thing. Yeah, she's always happy, she's always smiling. I'm like, no. She contributes a lot more than her smile. I mean, the smile in and of itself is a wonderful thing, but there's more to her than that. And that's been very challenging for me, is that constant, you know, reminder and constant redirection of people, and trying to understand her. That's the other thing that's been difficult for me, is just trying to see where she's coming from, because I know she's not approaching things the same way that I do. And I know she is approaching things in a way that makes sense for her. I just don't understand what that is all the time. So there's a lot of stepping back and just trying to see things from her perspective. Does that answer it? Is that
Yeah.
okay?
Yeah. Yeah. One of the examples I always use with Teddy in terms of how he understands the world differently is on an IQ test. They always have this one question where they give you 5 cards, and it makes a story, and they want you to put the 5 cards in order to make a story. Well, there's really only one right answer. Teddy never answers those right, but his stories make perfect sense. So it's one where they show an empty plate of cookies, and then a plate with some cookies in it, and then a plate with 1 cookie in it, and then like cookies going in the oven. Teddy sees it in an entirely different way than what they intend you to see. He sees the empty plate first, and then he thinks, okay, now I need to bake cookies. And then he puts 1 cookie on the plate, and then he puts more cookies on the plate. And it makes sense. That's the story that he tells, but that gets marked wrong, because that's not.
I hate those kinds of questions, Susan. Most like gifted and talented, brilliant people can come up with 10 different stories for that.
Yeah. That's such a good example. Yeah, that's perfect. And the other thing is she doesn't think of things the same way I do. Like, I keep preparing for her response to be something that I understand. Like, even though my older son is a whole different mindset, I can get him. I understand this direction, you know, but for her it's so different. Like where I you know, she gets so worked up about birthdays, for example, and I think that's a Down syndrome thing. So super, 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 really, really important. Birthdays are so important to her, and I was kind of stressing, you know, last year when we could have a birthday party, because we only really knew 2 people to invite to her birthday party. And I was so stressed about this, and I just kept going, and I was getting anxious about it. I was, like, oh, she's gonna be so disappointed. I don't want her to be disappointed. She's only gonna have 2 people. Isn't she gonna want this big glorious thing? Like, again, my assumptions of what she would want based on how important birthdays are to her. I was so wrong. I was completely wrong. Like, those 2 people, she was more than thrilled just to have those 2 people. She was so happy to have this exactly as it was. Like, her expectations weren't what I thought they would be. She just got joy in the cake and the balloons,
But you hear about that 364 days of the year.
What's that?
I'm 37 in 1 day. I'm 37 in 2 days. I'm almost 38 now, aren't I, Mom? No, not quite.
That's exactly what I get. That's exactly what I get. The day after she turned 10, we're in the grocery store. She's like, I'm almost 11. I'm almost 11. I'm almost 11. And then she's planning out her birthday party. I'm going to have this for my birthday party. I was like, Moxie, your birthday is in a year. And she's like, oh, it's okay. I can wait. It's so true, though. I think that birthday is a Down syndrome thing.
Yeah, when Teddy was 16, I gave him we were living in Syracuse and I was going to grad school. So I invited virtually everybody in grad school to come to his birthday party. And virtually everybody came. So we had hundreds of people at his birthday party. And It was amazing. I mean, I thought it was absolutely, totally amazing. And I thought, okay, I'm never going to top this. But I discovered I didn't have to ever top it, because the same thing you're saying, he just wants a party. He wants recognition for a party. And there better be a birthday cake with candles to blow out. It doesn't have to be any special kind of birthday cake. It just has to be able to hold candles, because there has to be candles to blow out. That's the important piece, the candle. You could probably put it in a paper cake as far as he's concerned, as long as there were candles on it to blow out. And presents, I used to be, worry about presents. He doesn't care if he gets any presents,
True. And it can just be something very small and very simple, and she's just over the moon about it, It's really, there was a lot in there for me to unpack and think about, honestly. It's just this, what exactly does this mean? Why is there, there's just so much appreciation for people in that birthday, that love for birthdays, because she doesn't just get excited about her birthday, it's all of ours. Like, she's in paroxysms of joy over any birthday. That's why I love Peanut Butter Falcon. Remember where his ultimate insult is, you're not invited to my birthday party.
Yes.
I don't think a paper cake would work for Teddy, though. He loves to eat.
That's true. Well, you can have a cake to eat and then have another cake with paper for the candles.
Okay.
Yeah, but paper and candles probably not a good combination.
Well, that's
Okay, so my birthday's January 20th. Don't forget it. It's inauguration day.
oh, we won't forget that.
And I like angel food with French frosting. I'm not going to tell you.
I hope we have a good inauguration day for you, Michael.
Yeah, I'm hoping I can really celebrate.
Oh, yes.
Are you guys all friends in real life?
Yes.
Yeah, I've known Laura probably 25 years, and I've known Susan probably, I don't know, Susan, what do you think, like 5 years?
Yeah.
I can't remember how long I've known Susan.
Wow.
I don't know, 15 years maybe?
At least. And Michael, I knew in a former life.
She just keeps roping me into things.
David, I just met this past week. And Mariah, I met you, I'm trying to think when I met you. it must have been about 10 years at an SDS conference. I'll still remember when you walked up to the table and I was like, oh, I know who you are. I know who you are. I've read your blog.
Oh yeah. No, I think that was in 5 years ago, maybe. Because Moxie was alive, and
That's true. Yes.
it was the ultimate momcation, because I went with my friend Catherine, right? Oh, I never get to go to those kind of things. So it was like the best thing ever. Like just being able to be there and meet you and meet everybody and go to those little conference talks. And they had that, remember that van thing for right there, the Disability Rights Are Human Rights was there with the whole history of that traveling van,
Mm-hmm.
Disability Rights Movement.
Well, we're having a dance this Saturday. We're having a virtual dance. Come to the dance.
Okay. What time?
7 to 9 our time. So it's not too late for you.
No.
It'll be only like 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And the kids are welcome.
Okay. That'll be fun. Okay.
Just Zoom in with us.
All right. I'll be there.
I've been meaning to tell you that I'm enjoying the fact that your eyes are the same color as your blouse.
Oh, thank you.
I thought that was my imagination.
No, that's what I'm looking at.
They are beautiful. Like, I just thought it was my imagination.
Thank you.
Well, sounds like we're rounding it up. And Michelle, if you want to take off, you're welcome to take off. Or you want to just hang out with us, you can just hang out with us. That's okay.
Hey, I am learning so much because Mariah she just took something over my head. Like she said, oh, I'm deaf. And I'm like, what?
What?
We were sitting here talking the whole full time. And I'm like, when she said that, I'm like, I was so rude. I didn't know. Like, I felt so bad.
Well,
I'm like, I was supposed to be signing and she didn't say nothing.
but because I was raised oral, so.
Yes, but we are taught that if somebody deaf enters, it doesn't matter if they're deaf or if they're hard of hearing, you're supposed to sign the full time if you know, because that gives complete access.
Oh.
And respectful. So I try to be sure to follow that all the time because I want somebody to respect me as who I am. So I want to respect everybody. And that's the thing that Susan and I was discussing before you came on. I've worked for 15 to 20 years with people with disabilities, not only deafness, but variety, because I worked in the center that trained them to work. And so, like you said, they have skills or they're brilliant, or you just have to find that one thing that they're good at and then try to motivate that, whether it's data entry or whatever. Because I worked with someone before and they would race to get to the computer. And the reason why was they was typing everybody's name that worked at the school as well as the students. So they knew everybody's name. So they would be good at data entry because they remembered everything. So that was the one thing, just to hear you say, to find out what they were special at or what they were skilled at or what they knew to be able to give to a situation or a school. That's the important part. And I've always said that. So it's like really cool.
Mm.
Well, we're so glad to have you as our interpreter.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Michelle, I have to say too, I really like the black background and the black shirt.
Me too.
Well, you do know.
It really makes you focus on your hands, and it's so clear.
Well, thank you. Thank you. So what's happening right now because of the Zoom? So when you, I don't know, Mariah can tell me, I don't know, I've never worked for BRS, but most of the time you will see that we'll either have on black, and I knew that having on black myself with the background, it's easier to focus on my hands, especially with this being a Zoom. We now all have ring lights that we use to make sure that the lighting is appropriate and how to set it up behind the camera area. Also, all the stuff to be distracting, because you see all the comments from the hearing people on TV or about the Zooms, about the interpreters, because a lot of things can be distracting, not only to the hearing people, but it's distracting to the deaf also. So I try to make sure that the focus is on my gestures as well as my hands, and not on what I have, or because sometimes I'll set up the camera just to see if my arms are too short. Like yesterday, I felt it was a little distracting because you could see my arms. So I think this is better with the hands only and being able to see the gestures, especially when we're on a Zoom meeting that's already distracting with the green around us and it's going from person to person. So that's enough distraction for myself. And then you might see the different people popping up. So that's why I did what I do, but I don't know about other people.
And I think it's important that we see your face, because there's so many people that read lips.
Yes. And
They don't want to admit that.
I was just getting ready to discuss that. So most of the time, I don't put on makeup. So if you've noticed, when we've had our meetings, I have on a dark lipstick. And I also have my eyebrows highlighted, because the gestures are in the mouth and the eyes. So I have an eyeline pencil on my eyebrows, and I have on a dark lipstick. So if somebody is trying to read my lips with the signing, then they can. So yeah. It's a lot of changes happening right now. Like if she met me in person in Hawaii, I wouldn't have had any makeup on. And then we would have different clothes on because it's hot. So it's really enjoyable to be with you all. And also it was nice to meet you, Mariah. So, and I hope you will contact Hard Cruise Line.
Yeah.
Because they do a lot of work with the deaf and hard of hearing.
Right.
And they travel a lot.
Wow. That's wonderful. I really want to. That.
Yeah, and then it was another one. I'll contact Susan and get your email. But there's another one too, because in 2022, it's going to be a full deaf group, about like around a 400 or 500 that I did recently. And it was 90 interpreters on that cruise. But
Wow.
that made full for all the excursions to have interpreters.
Wow.
So it was really enjoyable because it was people from everywhere. Puerto Rico, Mexico, different areas. It was really nice.
I want to go.
Were those family cruises or were those adult cruises?
That was we went to, I saw children on there, but we went to Belize. So that was a 7-day cruise also. So it was really nice. And there's 2 different or 3 different groups that sets that cruise up. And if I get your email, I'll send you and tell you the name of their organizations that use that, or send you the advertisement for that 2022 cruise. Okay. Everybody have an awesome day.
You.
You
I
too.
enjoyed being with you all and learning so much about Mariah. It was
Oh,
nice to meet you all.
nice to meet you too.
Have a great one.
You too.